am Dominus Cinephile.
Welcome to my movie and TV series reviews, where I will provide honest opinions of the latest releases. If the movie or TV series is a hit or a miss, be sure to know I will inform you. But if the movie or series is trash, be also sure to know that I will trash the hell out of the movie. I am Dominus Cinephile.
And the TV series on the review table today is the Nollywood series Anìkúlápó, The Ghoul Awakens. Anìkúlápó, The Ghoul Awakens is a 2026 Nollywood television series and the third installment in Kunle Afolayan's expanding Anìkúlápó universe. Assuming we are now bold enough to call it a franchise. The series continues Afolayan's ambition to build a mythological epic rooted in Yoruba cosmology, power, consequence, and the supernatural, while pushing Nollywood further into prestige long-form storytelling. This installment introduces a fresh wave of cast members, including Portuguese actor Pedro Teixeira, Teniola Aladese, Anta Lanian, and Portugal-born Instagram personality Tiago Gomes, popularly known as Oyinbo Ibile, who has firmly made Nigeria his home. They join a formidable returning ensemble from previous chapters, featuring Owobo Ogunde, Gabriel Afolayan, Lateef Adedimeji, Bimbo Ademoye, Solasobowale, Moji Afolayan, and several other familiar faces that anchor the series' continuity and gravitas. Anìkúlápó, The Ghoul Awakens premiered globally on Netflix on January 30, further cementing Kunle Afolayan's presence on the streaming platform and reinforcing the series' ambition to evolve from a single myth-inspired film into a sustained cinematic saga. Anìkúlápó, The Ghoul Awakens opens in the afterlife, where Basharu Ogunjimi is condemned to face judgment for his atrocities. Refusing his fate, he claws his way back to the world of the living, but at a horrifying price. He returns as a cursed being, trapped between life and death, a walking consequence of his own evil. Meanwhile, Prince Aderoju's triumphant return to Oyo is quickly poisoned by the disappearance of his sister, Omowumi. Widowed by a crime secretly orchestrated by Ogunjimi, she is now held in Ede as an inherited bride, forced toward a marriage she dreads. Defying royal protocol, Aderoju rescues her, shattering a fragile political alliance and igniting the threat of war. As tensions rise, a forbidden romance and a deadly encounter with the undead Ogunjimi push Aderoju to the edge of death, forcing the Alaafin of Oyo into a brutal choice: save his son or preserve the kingdom. Without wasting time, let's dive straight into the review and confront what this third installment of Anìkúlápó truly has to offer, and whether it shows any real growth beyond its previous chapters. The series opens by throwing the audience into the afterlife, where Basharu Ogunjimi is being ferried to the land of the dead to face judgment. He rides in a canoe across a river meant to resemble blood, an expanse of thick red waters clearly designed to evoke dread and damnation. In theory, this should have been a powerful, haunting introduction. In execution, however, it becomes an immediate warning sign. The scene exposes the show's weakest link almost instantly: its visual effects. There's no sugarcoating it. The CGI in this opening sequence feels amateurish and unfinished. The blood-red river looks artificial, wakeless, and visually hollow, pulling the viewer out of the story instead of immersing them in it. When Ogunjimi finally arrives in the land of the dead, things deteriorate further. The upside-down visual concept feels half-baked, as though the idea was ambitious but abandoned midway through execution. The inhabitants of hell, resemble poorly rendered AI-generated figures rather than tormented souls. And the entire sequence comes off as cheap, rushed, and visually embarrassing for a production of this scale. If you think this is where the problems end, think again.
The narrative abruptly shifts into a conversation between Ogunjimi and another condemned soul, casually plotting an escape from hell. We are told that the path to freedom lies in reaching an even hotter, more punishing region of the underworld. Yet, nothing on screen supports this claim. The supposed souls in torment show no signs of pain, suffering, or physical distress. They speak calmly, move freely, and behave as though they are standing in an air-conditioned room rather than a realm of eternal punishment. The disconnect between dialogue and visual storytelling is glaring and damaging, stripping the scene of tension, danger, and credibility. What should have been a chilling descent into the supernatural instead feels flat, unconvincing, and creatively careless, setting an unfortunate tone for what is meant to be a bold continuation of the Anìkúlápó saga. As the series drags on, it collapses under the weight of its own narrative confusion. What we are given is an exhausting barrage of poorly thought out subplots, none of which are given the depth, focus, or development needed to matter. Events unfold chaotically, one after another, with no sense of rhythm, cohesion, or narrative discipline. It becomes painfully obvious that careful planning and storytelling refinement were sacrificed somewhere along the line. One moment, the story fixates on Ogunjimi devouring human souls in a desperate attempt to reclaim his humanity. The next, we are yanked into Prince Aderoju's return to the palace, only for the plot to abruptly pivot again into a rescue mission to retrieve Omowumi from the kingdom of Ede. Just when the audience is struggling to emotionally anchor itself, the series introduces its most baffling and indefensible subplot yet. Aderoju's sudden romance with an antelope shape-shifting woman who materializes out of nowhere, contributes nothing meaningful, and disappears as randomly as she arrives. As if that weren't enough, the show piles on the Ake and Arolake subplot, followed by a half-baked slave trade angle involving Awaron and her daughter. This particular storyline is especially irritating because it appears briefly, vanishes without consequence, and only resurfaces conveniently when Omowumi is captured, exposing it as a narrative afterthought rather than a thoughtfully integrated theme. The most damning flaw is that none of these subplots work together to support a central narrative. Instead, they fracture the series into disconnected ideas fighting for relevance. At several points, the question becomes unavoidable. What exactly is this series trying to say, and where is it going? The answer, unfortunately, is nowhere clear. The subplots add no emotional payoff, no thematic weight, only confusion and narrative noise. The action sequences further deepen the disappointment. They are poorly choreographed, laughably stiff, and painfully outdated. In an era where global audiences are exposed to high-quality fight choreography, Anìkúlápó still presents childish combat scenes that feel more like stage rehearsals than cinematic confrontations. Worse still, the weapons, swords and cutlasses look unmistakably like painted wood, cheap props that shatter any remaining illusion of realism. With creative shortcuts, sloppy execution, and a refusal to evolve technically, productions like this make it difficult to believe Nollywood is serious about growth on a global stage. What should have been a bold, mature expansion of the Anìkúlápó mythos instead plays like a scattered experiment that never found its footing. I'll go straight to the performances, though there's little reason to dwell on them. Nothing across the cast stood out, impressed, or even demanded attention. If anything, the acting collectively fades into the background, not because of subtlety, but because of a glaring lack of conviction. Most characters sound like they are reciting memorized lines rather than inhabiting real people. The delivery is stiff, robotic, and painfully monotone, more reminiscent of stage rehearsals than cinematic performances meant for the screen. There is a noticeable absence of emotional weight or character immersion. Very few actors inject soul, urgency, or believability into their roles. Instead, what we get are flat exchanges and lifeless interactions that drain tension from scenes that should feel intense, mythical, or dangerous. Owoboogunde returns as Basharun Ogunjimi, reprising his role from the second installment, this time as a soul-devouring ghoul trapped between life and death. Yet, despite being positioned as the central figure and narrative spine of the series, his presence is shockingly minimal. Across the 5 episodes, Ogunjimi appears only sparingly, reducing what should be a commanding lead role to a series of brief, disconnected appearances. As a result, Ogunde's performance lands in an awkward limbo. It is neither compelling nor outright terrible. It is simply underutilized. With the story drowning in competing subplots, there is no space for his character to breathe, evolve, or intimidate. The audience is never given enough time to engage with Ogunjimi as a threat, a tragedy, or a force driving the story. The series' inability to prioritize its supposed lead ultimately robs both the actor and the character of impact. In summary, Anìkúlápó, The Ghoul Awakens, takes a vague and directionless turn and ultimately collapses under the weight of its own shortcomings. Like its second installment, the series is largely forgettable, leaving behind nothing truly compelling, daring, or memorable once the final episode ends. There is no moment that lingers, no idea that challenges, and no narrative payoff worth holding on to. Visually, the production makes a decent first impression. The village settings and physical set designs are solid and occasionally impressive, suggesting a world that could have worked. Unfortunately, these visuals are let down by weak writing that lacks depth, layering, or narrative intelligence. The story unfolds without complexity or cohesion, relying on surface-level ideas that never evolve into meaningful drama. Across its 5 episodes, the series often becomes so tedious and scattered that skipping scenes feels less like impatience and more like self-preservation. The pacing is uneven, the focus constantly shifts, and the lack of narrative discipline makes it difficult to stay invested. If you are a fan of disjointed storytelling, subplots battling for relevance, and CGI so poor it borders on cartoonish, then this might be your kind of show. Otherwise, The Ghoul Awakens stands as a missed opportunity, proof that ambition without execution is simply noise dressed up as spectacle. And now for my rating. Anìkúlápó, The Ghoul Awakens scores a disappointing 2 out of 10. I'm definitely trashing this. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon for notifications. Also, be sure to follow me on TikTok, WhatsApp channel, and Instagram at Domino Cinephile for more movie and TV series reviews. Domino Cinephile, signing out.